the best red light device. They don't cry when you leave, they freeze. You think they don't care, but that's not what's happening. When someone with avoidant attachment loses the one person who loved them deeply and unconditionally, they don't feel it immediately. Their nervous system delays the grief like it's putting their pain in a vault, locking it down, hiding it behind the iron doors of survival. And at first, they'll even seem relieved. They might get more social, more active. They'll post more, they'll laugh louder. They'll act like they've finally got their life back. But what's actually happening inside their brain is the beginning of emotional paralysis. It's not happiness. It's dissociation. Their mind is pushing them away from the memory of you because you represent what terrifies the most in real connection. When an avoidant person loses someone who truly loved them, they do not react the way most people expect. They do not cry at the door or beg at the moment of departure because their defense system is rooted in emotional disconnection. They survive heartbreak through emotional detachment, not emotional expression. Best red device. They've trained themselves for years to repress pain. So when they lose someone deeply significant, their initial reaction isn't collapse. It's silence. They appear fine on the surface. They carry on, they school, they post, they pretend, because facing loss head on would require them to feel vulnerable and exposed, and those are the very feelings they've spent a lifetime avoiding. They have learned to intellectualize their emotions, to tell themselves narratives like, they weren't the one for me, or I wasn't ready anyway, just to suppress the truth that their own fears destroy the only real connection they've ever had. And so at first they act indifferent. They fill the space with distraction. They keep themselves busy because stillness is their enemy, because silence begins echo with everything they tried not to feel. And it's in that stillness that their delayed grief begins to show. But it doesn't come all at once. It comes in waves. Waves, subtle, quiet, piercing moments, hearing a song they used to play together, or finding a note in an old drawer, or waking up and reaching for a body that isn't there anymore. It's those micro moments that begin to destroy them, not publicly, but internally, invisibly, because avoidants don't grieve loudly. They grieve in isolation. They collapse when nobody is watching. They start to remember the little things. The way they were looked at without judgment. The way they were held when they didn't ask for comfort. The way they were loved even in their worst moods. And it starts to register slowly that what they had was rare, and what they pushed away was real, and what they lost may never return. And this realization is suffocating, but still they don't admit it, not to friends, not to family, not even to themselves at first, because the ego is stronger than the heart in their world, and the ego says, don't reach out, don't confess, don't show weakness. So they suffer alone. They try to date others, they try to move on, but nobody else feels safe, nobody else feels real. Nobody else can see them the way the one they lost once did. And that emptiness begins to spread like a virus, infecting their sleep, their thoughts, their appetite, their joy. And by the time they realize that they want to go back, that they want to love again, that they finally understand what it all meant, it's too late. The person who truly loved them isn't there anymore. They waited for too long. They stayed silent for too long. And now they're haunted not by the person's absence, but by their own inability to receive the love they were always craving. And this grief is not explosive. It's not cinematic. It's quiet and corrosive and cruel. It doesn't scream. It whispers in their minds late at night, reminding them of the moments they could have been vulnerable and chose distance instead, reminding them of the texts they didn't send, the apologies they never made, the arms they pulled away from, the tears they mocked instead of softened toward. And now they're left in a world where genuine love feels like a memory rather than a possibility, because they destroyed the safest home they ever had in someone else, all because they never knew how to be held without fearing it would be taken away. And the tragedy is not that they were unloved. It's that they were fully loved, deeply seen, and entirely accepted. And it terrified them so much that they ran. And now they would give anything to run back. But the door they walked out of no longer opens for them. Not because they weren't worthy, but because they refused to believe that someone could truly love them without needing them to be perfect. And now the silence becomes unbearable. What's the best red light device? Because they realize that what they lost isn't just a person. It was the only version of themselves that ever felt whole. Avoidants don't break down when they lose you. They break down when they finally understand what you were giving them all along. and how blind they were to it. Because while you were loving them with everything you had, they were busy building walls. While you were speaking your truth, they were rehearsing silence. While you were pouring patience into their fear, they were pulling away, thinking you were just another phase. And it isn't until the quiet consumes them that they begin to realize the depth of what they rejected. Because in real time, they don't see your presence as a gift. They see it as pressure. They see your consistency as control, your vulnerability as danger, your love as a responsibility they're not ready for. So they downplay you, they dismiss you, they call your needs too much. Not because they don't feel for you, but because they feel too much and don't know how to handle it. And when you finally walk away, not out of spite, but out of exhaustion, they assume you'll come back because in their mind, love always lingers, even when they've given it nothing to hold on to. But as the days pass and you don't reach out, something inside them begins to unravel slowly and silently, because now the silence is not protection. It's punishment. Now the solitude is not peace. It's regret. Now every memory of you begins to sting not with anger, but with H, and suddenly they start replaying every moment they brushed you off, every time they turned away when you needed closeness, every time they made you feel small just so they could feel safe, and the truth they've buried for so long starts to rise through the cracks of their own loneliness. They begin to see that your love was never a threat. It was an invitation, that your honesty wasn't criticism. It was connection, that your presence wasn't pressure. It was peace. And this realization doesn't come with relief. It comes with grief that buries itself deep in their chest, because it's not just about missing you. It's about realizing they never truly showed up for you. And now they see the look in your eyes when you tried to explain what you needed. Now they understand the fatigue in your voice when you felt alone, even next to them. Now they hear the silent heartbreak in your laughter. The final goodbyes in the way you stopped repeating yourself. And it haunts them because they remember the way you stayed when you were hurting, the way you held space even when you were breaking, the way you believed them even when they doubted themselves. Best red light device. And they remember how you loved them in ways they didn't think they deserved, and how they made you feel like it wasn't enough. And that kind of realization doesn't just disappear. It lingers. It clings to them in quiet hours. It shows up in the faces of people who will never know them the way you did. It echoes in the empty messages they draft but never send. It screams in the questions they never asked, the apologies they never made, the gratitude they never gave. And what breaks them isn't the idea that you're gone. It's the truth that you were never really theirs to begin with, because they never let themselves receive you fully. And now they see that love isn't about controlling what we feel or hiding what we fear. It's about showing up completely, raw, open, scared, and still willing to try. And they weren't willing, not because you weren't worthy, but because they weren't ready to believe someone could look at all their chaos and still choose to stay. And now they are ready, but you are no longer there. And that is the H they will carry, not for weeks or months, but for years, because real love doesn't leave scars. It leaves lessons, and they are learning now in silence what they should have understood in your presence, that someone like you only comes once. And if you're not ready to open the door, you will spend the rest of your life wondering what it would felt like to walk through it.